Taming the High Cost of College, Ep040.
You have kids, they grow up, and before you know it, it's time to plan for college.
Where do you start?
How much is it going to cost?
Will you qualify for financial aid?
Should you be looking into scholarships?
When will you be able to retire?
What about student loans?
The list of questions is never ending. The good news is, all the answers are right here. Welcome to the Taming the High Cost of College podcast. Here is your host, certified financial planner, Brad Baldridge.
Hello, welcome to Taming the High Cost of College. I'm your host, Brad Baldridge. Today we have a great interview with Elizabeth Dankoski. She's an expert on admissions, and she works with families that are trying to attend some of the elite colleges, the Ivies, and other highly selective schools. So she has a lot of great information and resources available for those types of families, and we'll learn more about some of the projects she has coming up this summer as well. As always, links are available at our show notes at tamingthehighcostofcollege.com/40 for this episode. And in the show notes, I also have a report that I've created called The True Cost of the Ivies. In this report, I will show you some samples of how scholarships actually work at the Ivy League schools. I worked with some of their websites and their calculators to, again, show some net costs. So not the true net cost, not just the overall sticker price of some of these colleges. And you'll be surprised at how, for some families, the Ivies can be very affordable. Again, show notes available at tamingthehighcostofcollege/40. If you're interested in the true cost of the Ivies report, you'll enter an email address and we'll send that out to you straight away. All right, let's jump into the interview with Elizabeth. All right, today we're sitting down with Elizabeth Dankoski. She's an education consultant. Welcome, Elizabeth.
Hi, Brad. So good to be with you.
Before we jump into some of the interesting things you have going on, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do and why you do it and how you got into the college business?
Sure, absolutely. So for the past 15 years, I've been working as a college consultant, SAT tutor, what I call is an educational pathfinder. And basically what happened is when I was a student at Wellesley College, the writing department knew me as one of the top writing tutors there. And the writing department got a call from a family who had an 8-year-old son who's doing high school level math. And they were looking for someone to come in and kind of balance out the language arts piece. So I thought, well, sure, it's fun. So I just went over and we would play around with words and writing. And then she passed my name on to other people. And from there, literally, people just would call me and just say, can you come and help me with writing, help my child with writing? And it was fun. I thought, sure, what a great thing to do when I'm in college, and why not? And what happened is people started asking me to teach the SAT, and I said, sure, why not? And I taught myself how to teach it, and it went very well. The kids were getting great scores. And then, of course, from there, people started asking me to do the college application piece. And again, I said, sure. And I just kind of taught myself the process. I had only applied to one school, Wellesley, when I applied to college. So I wasn't the typical, sort of high school to college student. And but I learned the process, and my kids were getting really good results, getting into the really top schools like Harvard and MIT and Caltech, and the whole range of them. And the things changed for me about 3 or 4 years ago. Everyone had been sort of following the typical formula of top SAT scores, top GPA, lots of busy extracurriculars, heavily involved in music and sports, etc. And so I was just following what the typical formula was, and of course making sure that they had really great essays. I ended up getting my master's in creative nonfiction from Bennington, and so that I just had a natural ability to help kids express themselves on paper. So that was going well. But then a few years ago, I had a couple of things happened. One is I had a number of students who were all really high achieving. I was in the Boston area, so I was working with kids from these, kind of very competitive, high achieving high schools. And they all looked amazing on paper, and they, I knew them personally, so I thought that they were extraordinary. And when it came time around this time a few years ago for their results to come out, a lot of them were not getting into the really top schools. I mean, we know how hard it is to get in with those single digit acceptance rates, but it surprised me because some of the kids were getting it, and I was curious, what is the difference? They look the same on paper in so many ways, so what's really the difference? So what I did was I took a look at it, and I realized that the difference for those who were getting accepted and those who weren't is that those who were getting in had a strong distinguishing factor. And it really came down to having a unique project or a unique undertaking or some way that expressed how they were different and how their unique passions and skills, how they were expressing those in a way that served others. And I thought, okay, I like this. I'm getting clearer on what actually helps students get into their top schools. But the other piece that really changed for me that year is that I was really concerned about the level of stress that the kids were dealing with. I mean, they were just overworked and exhausted, and they kept saying, yeah, but this is going to help me get into my top choice school. And then when it didn't actually work, it felt very unfair to me. But really what happened is one student she was applying, I think, to 18 different schools. She was so worried that she was not going to get in anywhere. And so if you can imagine applying to 18 schools and all the supplements, I mean, it was a tremendous amount of work, and she was unbelievably stressed, and she would just disappear from me for a week or two. I wouldn't be able to get her to pick up the phone or answer my emails. I didn't know what had happened to her. And I literally every day that I worked with her over the course of that fall, I was terrified that I was going to get a call that she had killed herself. I was just so worried about her stress level. She ended up getting accepted into Tufts, a great school, but she was so disappointed that she hadn't gotten accepted into Yale. It was like devastating to her. And that was when I really said, okay, I can't do this anymore. I can't just tell kids get top grades, do a lot of busy activities, write a brilliant essay, it will work, because it doesn't work, especially, for these top tier schools. What I thought is I need to tell kids the message that they need to figure out what their distinguishing factor is. And so that's really become my mission, is figure out your distinguishing factor, live a life where you're expressing your unique passion and your vision and your talent, and you're serving others, because that's going to light you up. And even if it doesn't get you into the very top schools, because we know how difficult that is, you now know how to open your own doors so that you don't have to rely only on the name of your school to open the doors for you. So that's why I do what I do.
A couple things stand out in that list there. So when you say top schools, can you give me an idea of?
Sure. I'm talking about like the Ivies, the Stanfords, the Harvards, Caltechs, Columbia, Cornell, the huge MIT. So a lot of my students have gotten accepted there, but we all know how hard it is to get in there. So I wanted to look at a way to, first of all, increase your chances of getting accepted there if you are in range, because a lot of the kids I've worked with have SAT scores and GPAs that are in range for acceptance there. But that's, of course, not the only thing that these top schools are looking at. Once you have those top grades in SAT scores, it's like a given. It's like, well, yeah, and what else? So that's where this distinguishing factor comes in. But the way that I look at this is that, of course, not every student is trying to apply to an Ivy League or another really top school. So I think that every student needs to know, have a purpose, have a passion, have something that lights them up, so that they have a direction and they feel empowered that they can make an impact now. So that even if they're not one of these very top performing kids, those kids in the middle often get lost. No one's paying that much attention to them. And I think, they deserve it. They deserve to know that they have something incredible to offer now. And that makes them more effective in their college admissions, but it also makes them, just have a less stressed out, more clear direction in their life.
Right. I guess let's talk a little. So they got the top, I don't know, and I guess I don't know how you'd kind of divide schools, but I think of it as the top 25-ish. Those the
Sure.
Ivy League and the ones that are
Yeah.
very similar. The MIT, technically not an Ivy League school, but
Sure.
just as competitive, and Caltech and Stanford.
Yes.
But then what do you call the next group of schools kind of below that? They're top name brand schools, but they're not
Sure.
really the Ivy League, like I don't know, a Duke or a Notre Dame or
Sure.
they're not Ivy League. They're not quite as competitive.
Sure.
but they
But
are
there's-
competitive.
Yeah, but they're still competitive. I call them sort of the top mid-tier schools, like they're just beneath that Ivy League piece. I don't know. I guess I don't worry too much about naming them, but I just focus on when I work with a student, I focus on where do they want to go? Where are they going to thrive? What kind of environment do they need to really get the kind of resources that they need? Do they need to be in a large university where there's a ton of research, institutions and resources like that? Or do they need a smaller liberal arts environment where they're going to get a lot of connection one-on-one with the professor and their peers? It really is a very individual experience, and I look at it holistically with my students.
So let's drill down into that a little bit, because I think there's a lot of parents out there that have that high achieving student, and they're a little bit isolated because there's only one or two high achieving students at some high schools. Where, realistically, maybe the top 3, 4, 5 kids at that particular high school have a shot at some of these, top 100, top 200 schools.
Sure.
But a lot of them are deciding maybe they're not even going to try. And the one that does feel like he's trying is alone, right? I'm the only kid in my high school that's considering applying to Notre Dame.
Yeah.
And I feel very alone because my school counselor doesn't really understand, and my parents want to help. They just don't know what to do. So what would you do if you're a parent or talking to a parent that's just starting out and thinking that maybe they're going to go down this path, but they don't really have a trailblazer to follow?
Sure. One of the first things I would say is take a look at Cal Newport's book, How to Be a High School Superstar. I'm not really a huge fan of the title, but I love the content of the book. It's all about how do you distinguish yourself, and it's both practical and inspirational. So it's looking at, you don't necessarily need to have perfect grades and perfect test scores, although if you're high achieving, you probably have a lot of that sort of naturally. But it's ultimately about how are you distinguishing yourself? What is your unique project or your unique undertaking? And the earlier you can start this in high school, the more time you have to build something substantial. So you really want to be looking at this in terms of what is the thing that lights your child up? What are they naturally drawn to? I was just talking with a student last week, and he was interested in my program, the Innovation Project, which is all about helping high school students figure out this unique project. But he said, I said, what do you love? And he was like, I don't know, nothing. I said, well, what do you like? And he's like, well, he didn't even really know how to answer what do you like. So I told him, okay, then this is what your homework is to figure out something you like that will serve other people. Because I think when kids see that they can actually have an impact on others, that's very empowering. So I guess if I'm telling parents, if they're in high school where not very many other kids are thinking about a top tier school, then what they need to really focus on is what is their child's distinguishing factor. And they can really get a good sense of some ideas of the range of this by reading Cal Newport's book, How to Be a High School Superstar. So that's a really good place to start.
And then I guess I know the answer to this because I know you've got a resource, but you also have a resource out there that can help families figure out if they're on track. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So I have a free college readiness assessment quiz. And basically what you can do is you can have, the parents can have their child take this. It's just a short 15-question quiz, but it helps students identify exactly where their strengths and where their weaknesses are, how are their grades and SAT scores, if they've taken them yet, the SAT or ACT, how knowledgeable are they about the college admissions process, how much are they doing outside of the typical extracurricular activities, and it will give you a number range, if you're between 15 and 20, you can focus on this piece. I think it's really helpful just to get a sense of where am I at? What position am I in? Am I well positioned to apply to my dream school? Or if not, what do I need to work on? How can I make this a reality? And then when parents sign up for that, it's just on my homepage. If you scroll down a little bit, they can see where they can enter their name and email to receive the college readiness quiz.
Right. And we'll put all the information in the show notes for this episode, so they'll have it.
Perfect. And then they'll also get, after they've taken the quiz, they'll get from me the top recommended resources. And the name of Cal Newport's book is in there as well, so that, they don't have to try to remember what that is. But that's a very helpful beginning process to think about, how do you get into your dream school?
Okay. And now, from a parent's perspective, I think what we at least need to touch on is when you start looking at the glossy brochures from these high-end schools, and you see price tags in the 65 to 70,000 range now.
Sure, it's crazy.
What's your thoughts on that? I have some as well, but I'm just curious what.
Yeah, well, so one of the things I would say is that the very top schools have very large endowments, which means that they're able to give out substantial financial aid in ways that maybe some of the schools that are not as, that have high price tags but don't have as big endowments can do. So that's one piece. It's really worth looking into what kind of financial aid package is possible. I wouldn't automatically assume that whatever the price tag is what you're going to pay. You probably know a lot more about this, Brad, than I do, since this is your area of expertise. But what I know about college is that the sticker price is always higher than what you're actually going to pay, almost always. And they do that to make you feel good, that they can offer you a substantial financial aid package. It's a merit scholarship, let's say. And it makes parents feel like, oh, good, my child was rewarded for her good grades or something, and that's why I'm getting a financial scholarship. So a lot of it really does come down to marketing and the way that they package and present it to make parents feel like, oh my gosh, this is so expensive, but oh good, I got this great scholarship, so I'm only paying $40 now, as if that, that's a reasonable amount to pay for college. So that's kind of how I look at it.
Right. And again, what I tell people is that, again, at these elite schools, if you truly need the money, they have it. They will give it to you. However, on the flip side, a lot of the most elite schools, they're not going to offer merit aid. They're essentially going to say, you need to be a rock star to be accepted.
Sure.
And be thankful. If you can afford to pay, unfortunately, we're going to allow you to pay.
Right, yeah.
And if you can't afford to pay, then we've got all kinds of great scholarships and help. So again,
Absolutely.
I've seen families get very frustrated in that maybe they're doing reasonably well financially. Mm-hmm. And they say, well, why did I save all this money? Now I have to spend it on college.
Sure. Versus
other families that don't have much saved and can't really afford it, but then they all actually win the scholarships. And
I know it's the system is skewed. I'm not sure what the answer is.
Right. I'm not either, but just be aware that, I have heard and seen articles from people that are upset that their student didn't get a merit award at a college that doesn't offer merit awards.
Sure.
Nobody gets a merit award. So don't rely on merit awards at schools that don't offer them. Yeah. Understand how the need-based system works. But don't let the finances stand in your way, at least initially. Don't
refrain from applying because of the sticker price. You need to find out what they're offering you. It's worth applying if your child really wants to go there, and then finding out what kind of financial aid, if any, they're offering.
Right. On the other hand, if finances are going to be part of the decision, you need to be very upfront with the student. You don't want to get to the last, end of the senior year and say, oh, I know you had your heart set on this, but we can't afford it.
Right.
They need to hear that when they're sophomores and juniors, that if the numbers don't work out, we are going to have to pull the plug.
Absolutely.
And then most students can take it. But if it's a surprise to them, and let's face it, there's a lot of suburban kids out there that have always gotten everything they've wanted.
Right.
They got the PlayStation every Christmas or whatever it was, and they think college is a foregone conclusion. So just make sure you're upfront with your kids, and how much you're willing to pay, and certainly have a plan B if finances are going to be an issue as well.
Right.
All right, so let's talk about the innovation project. You mentioned it briefly, and I think it's a unique thing that you're offering. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that? And
Sure. So this is a new program. I'm running the first program right now. We're in the third week of a 4-week program. And basically this is a program, I'm going just to back up for 1 minute. I'm going to be offering this again in July, and it will be a 6-week more expanded program because there's a little more time in the summer. But basically the point of this program is to fill that need that I saw several years ago, where kids didn't have a way to distinguish themselves or a way to feel empowered in their education and in the college process. So I've created it to help kids figure out what is their particular innovative project. So this summer, when I run it again, it's the 6 weeks will be, we first focus on the science of success, the neuroscience of success. So we look at what happens in a brain that's a successful brain, so that we kind of have a baseline for how do we use our brains well to create the success that we want. Because, most kids are going to say, yes, I want to go to college. Yes, I want to, or at least you're in your audience, yes, I want to go to college. Yes, I want to go to my dream school. So we kind of look at, okay, what things do you need to put in place in terms of how you can best get your brain on board with this? Because there's a lot of really interesting neuroscience out there. So then the second week is more about what your distinguishing factor is. What is your passion? What is your unique skill and talent? What do you value? What's important to you? What kind of impact do you want to make on the world? These are questions that most kids are not generally asked. They don't hear this very often. So I'm asking them to think a lot about their personal, do some personal self-reflection to get clear on what do they want. Nobody really asks them that. They're sent to school and said, okay, you got to do all this coursework, and you got to get the grades, and you got to take your SATs and ACTs. I'm now asking them, what do they want? Because I think that's a really important piece. Then we look at leadership, and I think leadership is an overused word in high school. And a lot of kids think that means being the captain of some club or team in their school. And I see leadership very differently. I see it more as, how are you conducting yourself in your life as being the best version of yourself that you can be. And so what we really look at is, what's your unique style of leadership? Because if you're not an extrovert, you're not going to be out there in front of a group of kids, and you might feel that you're not a leader. But everyone has their own way of leading. So we really dive into looking at, what's your unique form of leadership. Then we look at what your unique project. What are you going to build? And I take students, what happens is, the way that the course works, or the program works, is we have a live call online every week at the beginning of the week to introduce that week's material and to be able to answer any questions that may come up. And then every day, Monday through Friday, I send out an assignment that's about 15 to 20 minutes long, just taking them through a series of exercises. So it's meant to be sort of in short bursts. So because I know how high school students work, they're not going to do well if I send them, 2.5 hours of material all at once. So little short bursts that help them get clear about, their distinguishing factor, their unique project, etc. So the fourth week is all about, what is their project? What are they actually building? And then we talk next about mentorship. How do you connect with a mentor? How do you make a mentoring connection work? How do you even find a mentor? These are things that I think many students don't know how to do. And they're going to be able to build their project and their distinguishing factor to a much higher level if they can connect with a mentor. And then the final week is all about time management and productivity, but always in the context of, what's your personal mission statement? If you don't know how you want to spend your time or what's important to you, it's going to be much harder to figure out how to create a schedule that you really want to follow. Otherwise, you're still in that place of, just doing what other people say you have to do, and just, being sort of in that passive mode. And so I want to take kids out of that passive mode and help them create something that distinguishes them, that will help them get into their dream school, but most important, empower them to see that they have the ability to make an impact on others now. And that's a very empowering thing that they don't get very often when they're just plugging into coursework.
Okay, great. So we got a lot of parents out there listening thinking, oh, that's interesting. So can you give me an idea what grade level of students are appropriate for this? Is it?
Yeah. So this is for, especially because I'm running this July, this will be good for kids just entering high school. So just rising freshmen, rising sophomore, rising juniors. If you're a junior now, if you have a junior now, then it's not that you can't do this, but juniors are going to need to now focus their attention on the applications themselves. So I don't want to overwhelm juniors with adding one more piece. They are certainly welcome to do this, but really, this is for younger kids to really build this project to a substantial level, so that by the time they get to be, rising seniors, they've got something really substantial to tell the colleges about.
Great. And then, so it's a 6-week program, and
Right.
they can where do they get more information?
They can go to my website, elizabethdankoski.com, and then it's right now it's just a landing page on my website, / the Innovation Project.
And again, we'll put a link into the show notes for that.
Great.
All right. So I think we've got a pretty good understanding of some of the things that you do. In order to wrap up here, I typically ask for 3 quick tips or
Sure.
ideas that could help a family figure out the college process. And I'd like to ask you just that. Can you give us a couple tips?
Sure, absolutely. So the first thing I would say is really figure out if you have your sights set on, or your child has your sights set on a top school, one of the competitive, I'd say like the top 100, 150 schools, you really want to look at how you're going to help your child distinguish him or herself. So that's why I love Cal Newport's book, How to Be a High School Superstar. But you don't have to read that. What you just really want to do is sit down and figure out, what do you value? What kind of impact do you want to make? How do you want to distinguish yourself from your peers? And really start to think about what is a unique area of interest that you can build into something substantial. So that's the first thing. The second thing is I would start looking at Naviance or at the colleges themselves to find out, where is your child in range for acceptance at one of these top universities, or whatever your dream school is. You want to find out, are the SAT or ACT scores in range? Is the GPA in range? Because if not, you don't want to set your child up for disappointment and feeling just like, the rejection piece can be really tough at this time of year. So I like to say, when you're start building your list, and as you look at the numbers and you get a sense of where your child stands, you want to build your list so you have the top third is for reach, for your kind of dream schools. The middle third is for a list of schools that you're pretty sure you can get into, and then your lower third is for your safety schools. You don't want to put yourself in a position where you don't aim at all for what your top school is, but you don't want to set yourself for not getting accepted at any place, right?
Right.
So balance there. And then the third piece I would say is, especially if you have a junior, you really need to start thinking about, how do you write a remarkable essay? So I'll just tell you the power of writing the right story. I had a student come to me in December who was waitlisted at Cornell, and he had done all his applications on his own. And I took a look at his essay. He wanted to know what he could do to get off the waitlist. And I took a look at his essay, and I knew right away why he hadn't gotten accepted. It was a very well-written essay, but it didn't tell me anything really personal about him. It just told about how he had created this app for his volunteer position at the farmer's market. But I could have probably figured out that he wanted, that he was into engineering and programming just by looking at his activity sheet. So I told him, you need to tell me something more personal about yourself. What other qualities are you bringing to this school? And so we ended up writing a new essay that was much more personal and was really beautiful, reflected his role as a connector in his school. And he just told me last week that he got off the wait list. He was accepted at Cornell, and he was also accepted at MIT. So I think that, and this is not the first time this has happened. This happened a couple of years ago with another student who was waitlisted at Harvard. He also got off the wait list by writing a brand new essay. So this cannot be understated enough, overstated enough. The idea of telling the right story is so important. In my top recommended resources, which parents will get when they sign up for my college readiness assessment quiz, they'll get that automatically. I give some recommendations on different college essay resources that would be good to start looking at now. So it's really important to start figuring out what is the right story and how do you convey the depth of and breadth of your students' experience and personality. So I would say those are the top 3 things that I think are really critical, especially now for the juniors.
All right. Well, great. Thank you. Before I let you go, I got a real quick question because you mentioned Naviance. And can you explain what Naviance is? Because I think that might be a new word for some families.
Sure. So Naviance is a program that many schools use that shows you where, in the past, where their students in this particular high school have been accepted. So it gives you a sense of how likely am I to be accepted if I apply, knowing what my GPA is and my test scores are. It's a good, not every school, I don't think every school uses it, but many schools use it. And it's a good place just to get a sense of, I'm similar to this student. How likely am I to be accepted at my top choice school?
Right. So Naviance is a tool that high schools pay for, and then they can provide it to parents. So if your high school offers it, take advantage of it because there's a lot of great tools in it.
Yes.
Unfortunately, if it's not available through your high school, I don't think at this point you can sign up individually anymore.
Right. But you can look at the individual colleges to find out what is the typical applicant, what is, in terms of the GPA and the SAT scores. And usually you're just looking at those sort of basic numbers to find out, are you in range?
Right. Okay. Well, I appreciate you spending some time teaching us all about admissions. There's a lot of great nuggets in there.
Absolutely. Pleasure.
People want to get a hold of you. What are the best ways for people to follow up with you?
Sure, they can sign up for my newsletter, or they're welcome to email me at info@elizabethdankoski.com. And or if they just go to my website, elizabethdankoski.com, there's a form where they can email me, and I'd be happy to make a time to chat with them or answer their questions. Anything that I can do to support them in this process, and that's what I'm here for.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Elizabeth, and I'm sure we will talk soon.
Okay, great. Thanks, Brad.
All right, that's all we have for today. I hope you enjoyed the interview with Elizabeth. Again, if you're interested in the report True Costs of the Ivies, go to our website at tamingthehighcostofcollege.com/40, which is episode 40 of the podcast, and you'll be able to enter your email address. And once you've confirmed your email, we will send you that report straight away. All right, that's all we have for today. I appreciate you listening. Again, if you have any questions or ever need any help, feel free to contact us through the website, or you can email me at brad@tamingthehighcostofcollege.com. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week.
Thank you for listening to the Taming the High Cost of College podcast. Now it's time for you to take action. Head to tamingthehighcostofcollege.com for show notes, bonus content, and to leave feedback for Brad. The next step on your college journey starts now.
Brad Baldridge is a registered representative of Cambridge Investment Research and an investment advisor representative of Cambridge Investment Research Advisors, a registered investment advisor. Securities are offered through Cambridge Investment Research Incorporated, a broker-dealer and member of FINRA and SIPC. Brad owns two companies, Baldridge Wealth Management and Baldridge College Solutions. The Baldridge companies are not affiliated with Cambridge Investment Research.